Hi, I'm Greg, and this is Mad Gear, the show that introduces you to some strange, weird, wacky, and delightful studio items and practices for the modern day producer and musician. And continuing on from the last episode, we're going to be looking at another Yamaha Porter Sound Studio PSS keyboard, but this time we're looking at the PSS-470. I had to remind myself. Why? Well, this keyboard has already got quite a few videos on it, and it talks a lot about that this has the original FM chip that was used on the original Ad-lib sound cards and also the Sound Blaster sound cards. So they were used extensively in late 80s, early 90s PC games for all their sound. So think of this like a Sound Blaster in a keyboard. The other reason I'm looking at it is it has a basic DX FM 2 operator synthesizer, and FM synthesize is a bit of a lost mystical art, and if you look at how many people never ever programmed their DX7, you'll appreciate it was something that people were aware of the possibilities but never truly got their head around actually using it. And if you look at the amount of new and current FM synthesizers that are available, there's like the Volker FM, there's like the Sonicware Living X FM, you've got the Korg Op6, you've also got this Sonicware ELZ1, and there are many others. FM synthesis kind of seems to be making a bit of a comeback, and this I find is a really good way of being able to introduce you to the sonic variations in a much more simplified fashion, because instead of it having loads and loads of menu options and loads of controls, you've effectively got 5 sliders, each with 5 settings, and from within those settings you will see and hear that you can create a vast array of what I think is of really good tones. I also think this keyboard is a bit of a bass monster. Now, I will say straight away, there's no MIDI on it. There's no synchronization capabilities whatsoever. However, there are people who have MIDI retrofitted these, and I'll put a link in the description below. And it's something that, you know what, even though I am sampling this, it's something that I'm thinking maybe I should do myself, because this is becoming a keyboard I'm using a lot. And again, like the last episode, it would have been one that I would have turned my nose up in the past and thought, it's a home keyboard, it's going to be rubbish. And yet again, I would have been completely wrong. So let's have a look at the keyboard, and as you'll see, we've got our rhythm section here, and we have our orchestra, and there are 21 different preset sounds, and then you've also got 12 different rhythms. Now you do have a custom drummer section with five drum sounds to choose from that you can program. You've got your auto bass chord accompaniment, which is useful to somebody maybe, but where it gets really interesting is your digital synthesizer section here. You'll also notice we've got a stereo symphonic section, we have a sustain, we have a vibrato, and we have a duet, which is when you're using it with something else, which to be honest I don't tend to use. I use the sustain, and the stereo symphonic. It's like a chorus effect. So I'm going to turn off this section here, and we'll just focus on some of our presets. So it's capable of your typical FM style bell-like sounds, which I actually think are really, really good. So piano sounds rubbish. Again, there's stuff there you could use, possibly, but let's go back to our digital synthesizer section, and this is where things kind of get interesting. You'll notice we have a master volume, our auto bass chord volume, rhythm volume, if you want to hear a rhythm. If anyone's wondering, that is the Mercury 7 by Meris pedal that I'm using again. But for all the initial sounds that I'm doing at the moment, I'm actually not using any of the effects whatsoever. And this keyboard doesn't have any effects other than the vibrato and the stereo symphonic. So let's turn this on. And straight away you will see we have a wave, we have a spectrum, modulation, attack, decay and volume, and that's just a way of being able to balance that with your bass and your rhythm. So spectrum is like an octave, but with a bit more kind of stuff going on. And then your modulation is a bit like a filter. So the attack, if I reduce that, get these really nice kind of squelchy sounds. So let's change the decay. Now, I think you can actually get the lately bass sound, which, for those who know DX or FM synthesizer bass sounds, that's a really, really well-known one. And I do feel you can actually get that with this, or certainly a very close approximation. And these you can pick up online for about £40, which is about $50. You can probably get them cheaper. This one I bought, I think, cost me 40 quid, including postage, which I think is an absolute bargain if you want those classic FM sounds, but you don't want the to open an instruction manual and spend hours and hours trying to work out all your operators and modulators and carriers. So this is a much quicker shortcut way of being able to kind of see what it can do, which is why FM synthesis is something that's really starting to appeal to me, because I'm starting to understand what it can do and also how it sounds. And moving the attack and decay sliders whilst it's kind of going comes up with some really kind of So now we're going to bring this in with a track that I'm working on at the moment, and you'll see how it can work pretty well. So you'll see it really does have some bottom end. So I've already recorded that in. I've used Quantize within Pro Tools from Audio Quantize, and it sounds a bit like this. So bringing in another bass drop. Now, one thing to bear in mind is, a bit like a traditional old school analog synthesizer, is there are no memory slots available for you to store your own sounds. So the only way you can truly kind of save sounds is to take a picture of the slider settings, but considering there's only 5 sliders and 5 settings per slider, it's not going to take you a huge amount of time to recall the sounds that you've, or the patches that you had. And as it is digital, it will they will sound exactly as you had them originally. So it's great for bass, I think. It's also really, really good for bell-like sounds. So if I kind of bring in something else now, so this is something in typical Blue Peter fashion I did earlier. So really nice glistening kind of bell sound. The only thing that I added that's different to this was I used some of the Meris Mercury 7 for a bit of reverb. Now, I have quite a lot of synthesizers, from ARP2600s to SH101 clones, Juno clones, so a lot to choose from. I've had V-Synth XTs, I've got a Prophecy behind me, and loads of other stuff that are really, really powerful synthesizers. Yet, this is a track that I'm currently working on for my publisher, and I'm more than happy to use a synthesizer that has cost me literally less than £50. That, if you were to look at the profile of it on some of the websites, would say it's a toy, but personally, I don't think it's a toy at all, and certainly not in the way that it sounds. Yes, it does look like a toy in its appearance, but not in its sound. One thing that is slightly frustrating is that you do have to plug a lead into the headphone socket if you want to disengage the internal speakers. And to make life a little bit easier, I have come out of here into the effect is bypass, so that's kind of almost like it's not there. But I have gone into a DI box, which is then going into my SSL mixer. So yes, it's a little bit more time consuming than, say, you would use with a plugin, and I believe there actually is a plugin based on this, but I think having the tactile physical thing in front of you is a lot more inspiring than just, say, using a mouse and looking at a computer screen. So now I'm going to kind of move away from the bass sounds, move away from the bell-like sounds, and using, say, the Meris Mercury 7, let's kind of have a look and see what kind of pad-like sounds that you can get out of this keyboard. I will say now, there are limitations to what this can do. Because you don't have a typical ADSR, it doesn't really do massive epic pads unless you start adding effects, which are considerably more expensive than this. But you could use plugins. Valhalla Reverb would probably work pretty well on this if you've got that, or some of the other big reverb, the ethereal kind of shimmer like stuff that is quite popular at the moment. But let's have a look and see what we can get with this. If we change our attack and decay so they're at the longest setting, you can kind of get some really nice so that's pretty fat. I really like that. So let's bring in a reverb. Let's turn the sustain on. Quite remarkable, I think, not only just because it's a cheap keyboard to buy, but also because it's giving me, and hopefully you, a really good introduction to really how amazing FM synthesis is and how capable it is of just such a vast array of sounds. I think we're so accustomed to subtractive synthesis, and with that immediate kind of hands-on control, that is obviously certainly very popular now and has been making that comeback since the mid-90s. So that is today's, or this is today's Mad Gear, the Yamaha PSS-470. They do a 570, which is pretty much the same but with more drum sounds. Again, they're quite commonly available second-hand. Go try one out. I will be creating a sample bank that will be available for my patrons of some of my favourite sounds. So it'll be a combination of bell-like, pad-like and bass sounds that I will multi-sample, available to download. But yeah, go try one out. Write in the comments beneath what you think of it. Am I talking absolute rubbish and you still think this is a toy? Or do you think, yeah, actually, he's got a point. There's some pretty nice stuff there and it's pocket money. Why not give it a go? But thank you for watching and see you next time.